It is Friday night. It is not 11 o'clock like our normal time, but I wanted to have my guest star Harpo come in, and he's a little too tired at 11. So we're going to try this with Harpo in my lap at 10 o'clock. And Will, I believe, is going to be joining us. He was going to say he was going to join us or go out fighting crime. So
He'll
we're
be
going to ask.
fashionably late.
Yes, he knows how to make an entrance, so we'll worry about that when he gets here. But we have Erica Schultz, comic book writer who I had the pleasure to meet and embarrassment to use the wrong name at San Diego Comic-Con about 5 years ago. Have wanted to apologize in person ever since, but
It's fine. Don't worry.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it over StreamYard. Pleasure having you, and
Thank you.
yeah, we normally do kind of a little 30-second pitch, but why don't we do the 30-second pitch as I pull up the Kickstarter page at Christabel, and we'll go right into a deep dive, and we'll let people know exactly what this Kickstarter and comic book is for.
Okay, thank you. And no apology necessary. I know San Diego is an insane place, time, and everybody's heads are screwed on wrong at San Diego. So I get it. Don't worry.
Yeah, no. You were cool at the time. I was still embarrassed.
It's totally fine. So Christabel is a 3-volume graphic novel that we are funding the first volume right now. It is on Kickstarter. Christabel is an adaptation and continuation of an unfinished poem written by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Coleridge had originally written the poem and planned it to be 5 parts. And he wrote the first part in 1797 and the second part in 1800. And then he never wrote anything else. And the legend goes that his writing partner, William Wordsworth, had basically said, I see what you're doing with this, but it's really not up to our standards. And Coleridge kind of got stage fright. So it falls off on this huge cliffhanger,
right?
Because it's only 40% done, and it's a poem that I first read in college, and it's haunting. There's something about it. It's an epic poem, so it does tell the significant story about this young woman and how she's sort of tricked by this witch. And how the witch sort of worms her way into her life, and then all hell breaks loose. So I've really been very interested in where the story would go, because the poem ends with just Geraldine, who is this sorceress, finding her way into Christabel's heart and home, and then that's it. And Geraldine meets Christabel's father, who was a widower. And everyone is besotted with Geraldine. She is beautiful. She is smart. She's basically the type of sorceress who will just, not in a physical sense, she won't shapeshift, but she will become whatever it is that you need someone to be. So the way she gets into Christabel's heart is that Christabel is an only child. She doesn't have a mother. Her mother passed when she was born. So she's always wanted a sister, a mother figure. And she sees this woman, not much older than her, but older than her, beautiful, smart, congenial. This is what I've always wanted. This is like my new best friend, my new sister kind of thing, and worms her way in. What does Christabel's father, Leoline, want? He wants companionship. He wants a queen to be able to rule his kingdom with. So she sort of finds a way to be whatever it is you need her to be and sort of charm you. And that's as far as Coleridge's poem went. So what we did was we start the story about 10 years into the future, when Christabel had gotten sharp to Geraldine's con and ends up being cast out. Geraldine is so good at getting into people's heads that she manipulates Leoline to cast out his only daughter.
Are we still within the source material of the poem now, or have you already?
Oh no, that's already extrapolated.
Okay.
The source material of the poem literally goes from Christabel as a young woman sneaking out at night. And I changed a few things. In the poem, Leoline is a baron. In this version, he's a king. Um, in the poem, Christabel is going out to pray for her betrothed, who's a knight, to come home safely. Whereas in our version, she's going out to commune with the spirit of of her past mother.
Okay.
Um, but in both versions, she hears this sound and she turns around, and there's this young woman laying at the base of an oak tree, and she's a little worse for wear. And Geraldine tells her this story about how she was kidnapped. You know, she's a noble woman, and she was kidnapped by these people, and you know, she just escaped with her life. And oh, I can't believe what a harrowing, thing I've been going through. And it's just, this is adventure that Christabel is interested in. Like, she's telling her this adventurous story. She's
Hmm.
this beautiful woman who's just like, oh, she could be like a sister to me. You know, everything that this young girl is really looking forward to and looking to have. Um, and then that evening, Christabel brings her into the castle in the poem, and in our adaptation, brings her into the castle. And then the next morning she introduces her to her father, and her father's, oh, we're going to get the knights out to find these marauders and this, that, and the next thing. But that's where it basically ends.
Okay.
So we've taken it and said, well, what we know that Geraldine is is a con. We know that
Hmm.
she's a sorceress. We know that she's playing the long game here. Where does that end? Where does that go? So we took it to the point where Geraldine and the king get married. And when Christabel voices her dissent to this, because she starts realizing, yeah, maybe she's not who I thought she was, um, is when the king is sort of bewitched more, and she's cast out. So when we first meet Christabel, she's in her early to mid 20s, and she is living as a bounty hunter, and in kind of, scavenging for survival.
Hmm.
Um, and her it's funny, I kind of liken it to writing comics, where you usually have like a day job and then your side gig of writing comics. So
Right.
her day job is she's a bounty hunter, and her side gig is searching the six territories for any mystic that she can get advice from to find a way to kill Geraldine. So
Okay.
it's like a revenge story, but at the same time we twist it a little. She ends up bumping into an old mentor of hers who was also cast out a few years after her, again for getting wise to
Hmm.
Geraldine's scheme and being cast out from that. And so when she meets Wejun, it sort of reinvigorates her, because now she knows, this is somebody I know, this is somebody who's on my side. Let's, kick ass together, kind of thing.
Right. Do when we talk about things that are brought in it, it's an epic poem, which can get dark, fairy tale, which can be light or dark. If I were searching for somebody 6 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, what is the age appropriateness of this story by the end?
Oh, I would say from the beginning, the age appropriateness is probably, I would say, a PG-13 to
Okay.
like PG-15.
Right.
Um, I mean, there are, depending on I don't tell people how to parent, but there
Right.
are LGBTQ themes. There are, it's not graphic, but we discuss sex, we discuss, questioning gender, gender identity. There's blood, there's swords, there's, in the first 5 pages, she's literally chucking an axe at someone's head.
Okay.
So
Well, I still want this, but I'm in Florida. Am I going to be able to buy it, or is that going to be illegal by the time the Kickstarter ends? I guess that's a question for Ron DeSantis, not
I
you.
really don't know. I really don't know, because in this first volume, Wei Jun is outed. And one of the reasons why he is cast out, he is the captain of the King's Guard, and one of the reasons why he is cast out is he goes to the king and says, Geraldine is, there's something funky about her, and she says, well, I know there's something about you too, and she outs him
Okay.
to the king. Um, and it's an interesting kind of dynamic because half of the king's reaction is, yes, Geraldine's manipulation, but the other half of the reaction is just being a homophobe.
His own prejudices
His own
before, right?
prejudices. And that's something that Wei Jun actually, it breaks his heart even more because, the king was like family to him.
Hmm.
Um, because when, and we learn more about this in volume 2, is Wei Jun actually comes to the king as an orphan. And so the fact that the king's family took him in and raised him up to be a knight, and he sort of held this status,
Hmm.
that was a big deal. And now this person who was like family is not just showing, not just being manipulated, but they're also showing their own prejudice, their own
Hmm.
bias. And that's, like, wow, I thought I knew you kind of thing.
No, that's deep and interesting. I can't wait to see how you guys work through that. How often, when you're doing, I'm super interested in any of these things that are done with public domain, but this is a totally different animal within the same kind of zoo. How often do you go back to the 2 volumes that he's written to either find inspiration or decide whether or not you're on the right
It's
track?
literally right here.
Hmm.
It's literally right here. I have my old notes from college in this book that is my old college, and he was on a podcast the other day. I was like, it's got stains on, it's probably like coffee and cigarette stains.
Right.
um but I mean, I won't say that I can quote the entire poem because it's multiple, it's like, I think 240, no, it's more than that. The first part is over 240 stanzas,
Wow.
um 240 lines rather. So I mean, it's a significant poem. I can't quote it top to bottom.
Right.
um but the I know the themes for, like, one of the themes is always, shield her well. When they're talking about Christabel meeting Geraldine, there's this sort of third person omnipotent narrator who talks about how, Jesu Christu shields her well. She folded her arms beneath her cloak and stole to the other side of the oak. What sees she there? There she sees a damsel bright, dressed in a silken robe of white. So it's obviously, you don't need to be shielded from anything that is going to be harmless to you.
Hmm.
So why are you calling to Christ for protection if this damsel in silken robe of white is harmless? you know
Especially
s-
at that time when you run across a babe in the woods. What is
exactly.
less scary, but something back here. All right. No.
Something reptilian brain, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's little things. It's interesting because what it sounds like he's setting up, and something that I had surmised, we're going almost 30 years ago, when I first read this, um, was this idea of the ghost of Christabel's mother was still in the castle, and she was trying to save her daughter, and she was trying to guide her daughter.
Hmm.
Because in the original poem, she goes out in the middle of the night to pray for the safe return of her betrothed. In our story, she goes out in the middle of the night to commune with her mother's spirit.
Hmm.
So, what I think, and I could be completely wrong, he was going for is this idea of uh, the spirit of her mother trying to protect her. And in our story, Christabel has this necklace that her mother, that was her mother's. And
Hmm.
we sort of use that notion of there's something of her mother's that's protecting her. And so she has this necklace that, little does she know, actually does protect her from some, not all, obviously, but from some of Geraldine's, wary little, hoodoo.
Well, it sounds like you have a responsibility to the text. Is that responsibility freeing or a cage? Like sometimes working within rules makes you better. So
I
how do you feel?
I think that I think it's both. I think it's great that already the beginning of the I mean, I know the end of the story. I've already written it. But I think it's great that I already have a starting off point, that I already have guardrails, for lack of a better term.
Hmm.
So that's great to me. I find that very interesting, and um I find that good because it helps guide the story.
Hmm.
The other side of it is this is a very famous poem, and it's one of two poems that I've been obsessing over for the past almost 30 years. And if I screw this up, that's really going to break my heart.
Right.
You
But
know,
you said you've already finished the thing, that finished
yeah.
this. Obviously you don't feel like you're going to, and I mean, I don't
I don't
know him.
know.
I don't know him personally, but I've known James Emmett on, Twitter for about a decade. I trust him to basically speak with you
Yes.
if you
J-
were.
James is fantastic. James actually edited the Image comic series that I have called Deadliest Bouquet with Carola Borelli, Gab Contreras, and Tom Chu. And James did a fantastic job on that. The first volume, which is what we're kickstarting, is completely written. The second and third volumes are, which are also 60 pages each, is those two are already outlined. So I haven't started scripting them, but we know exactly
Gotcha.
where the story's going to go.
Hmm.
Um, and for me, I mean, this is a poem that is very, very near and dear to my heart. So I want to do it justice.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm trying to make sure that anything that I do add isn't taking away from the original. I mean,
Right.
yes, there's things that I changed, and I made, Christabel a princess and her father a king versus a baron, and she's just being a noblewoman, and I added all this extra stuff about the knights.
Right.
But I think that anyone who knows the poem and uh, knows the spirit of it will hopefully see that I've maintained the spirit of what Coleridge was originally writing. Now, mind you, I'm inferring what I think he's going for.
Of course. Right.
I mean,
Right.
I have two parts of a five-part story, so I have less than 50% of
Hmm.
this story. So I can only, I mean, for all I know, the man's spinning in his grave saying, "How dare this person? How dare she?" You know, but for all I know, he could be looking down and saying, "Oh, you get it. You get it. You
I,
see where I was going and you get it." And that's kind of what I'm hoping for, but I'll never know.
if he's pissed in his grave, it's probably more Wordsworth than you. He'd probably sitting up there going, you know what? That poem was pretty good.
Yeah,
Why'd I listen to that guy?
but it's funny because as confident as we can be as creators, it's
Right.
really easy for someone to just shut us down. There's another poem that I love. It's a poem by Robert Browning, and it's much shorter than this. It's not this giant epic poem. And I outlined a sci-fi retelling of it it's called Porphyria's Lover is the name of the poem. And with all for all in about 5 years that'll be coming out from Kickstarter, or I'll be pitching it to Image or somebody. Um, but those I think are the two poems that I think that if I screw them up one way or another, yeah, I don't know. I might have to self-immolate and just like throw myself into traffic or something, because then I'm just totally, all my English professors from college, or the few that are still alive, are just
Right.
face palm emoji.
No, I think that it's a great thing that you feel that responsibility, because I am ignorant of both of those poems. So you know, what I'm going to do is kickstart your book, get all three volumes, read them, and I would guess that then I'm going to get the poem and read it after. I'm going to do the backwards way and look at it as a detective going through both. But you have that love of the thing. So
Yeah.
I'm not at all worried that I'm going to get something that messes it up, bastardize it. I don't think you're
I
going to
hope.
ruin his childhood. But you're not going to ruin somebody in 1830s childhood. I trust that because I can hear the
I hope.
passion about it.
Yeah. I mean, I really there's something about the poem that's very haunting, this, and also, I mean, during that time in the late 1700s, 1800s, they were, there's this sort of romanticization of, the medieval times. That's when you're looking at the Arthurian tales and things like
Mhm.
that, and there's just like romanticism about it. And, that's something that's sort of like fantasy, sword, sorcery has always, that genre has always been around.
Mhm.
And I like playing in that genre, but I feel like this is the first time that I'm really going like full into it, which always kind of worries me as well. I mean, I did Forgotten Home with Comixology Originals and Dark Horse. And it was an urban fantasy that had sort of, medieval mythological kind of things going for it, but it wasn't like castles and whole hog like this.
Right.
So I think that's kind of a nerve-wracking thing as well. I'm like, I hope people can, I hope it's believable, because
Yeah.
it's funny because I'm, a lot of the work that I write is, the things that I was, known for was these sort of street level characters, like writing
Mhm.
Moon Knight and writing X-23 and these like angry street level characters. And then, you dip your toe into like princess, blue-haired princesses and giant gay knights,
Yeah, I
it's
would be
like,
mo I
what?
would be more worried about the fantasy readers than the people than the historical poet,
Yeah.
historians. But I kind of looked out and there's a comment I'm gonna check in a second because I wanna make sure if somebody's watching this, we get to the comment. I just checked the Kickstarter. You're what, 3, 4 days in, 5 days in, you already have 186 backers. I have to assume that at least 100 of those 186 people are like me, ignorant of the source material. So
I hope. Maybe.
even, yeah, but even so, like, I don't think you're going to do this, but let's say you screwed it up. You introduced the poem to 100 people already. So even if you screw it up, you brought it into our consciousness, and we might learn that you screwed it up by going to the source, and you've already done something well, even if you screwed it up.
So I'm enriching their lives with
Mine.
poetry, but also screwing myself.
Well, I mean,
Great. I
well,
still
listen,
gotta finish writing volumes 2 and 3. I mean, come
I
on.
isn't the good of the many more important than the good of the few? So if
Yes.
you make 100 people's lives better and ruin your own, I mean, I don't want that to happen, but I mean, math says that's 99.
I mean, I'm looking at all the notes that I did in the margins, and now I'm thinking, God, was I wrong back then? Am I should I be really like putting this on? I don't know.
No, don't let the way I look at the world. Don't let me Wordsworth you.
Oh
You
man.
do not because I'm
Don't give me stage fright, man.
yeah.
I already launched the Kickstarter.
No, I'm excited to read this, and we've got Tate in the chat says we pressure on yourself. Something about it won't be perfect, but people can still enjoy your take. You're
Thank
gonna
you, Tate.
finish it. You're gonna finish it. Like, yeah, like
Well, the first volume is already finished. It's already written.
mhm.
Amagoya only has Amagoya Gary, who's the fantastic illustrator on the book, has less than 20 pages to draw.
Oh wow.
She has less than 15 pages to draw. Um, so the first volume is, there's no going back on that.
No, 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 and
that
and you
one's
shouldn't.
that one's done.
And don't you
You know,
dare let this conversation even give you pause to think because I'm ready
We'll
for it.
see what a turn. You see what's gonna happen is volume 2 is gonna open with this, like, crazy turn, and you're gonna be like, "Wait, what happened in the 18 months?" But, the 12 to 18 months between volumes 1 and 2. Oh my god.
We're
Yeah,
there. She's sitting on a stump on a three layout house in Brooklyn. Smoking a cigarette or vaping. I'm like,
exactly.
oh, I think my joke went too far. You talked about how did you get this team together? I'm going to assume you kind of put out the feelers.
Well, James and I have worked together multiple times. James is an editor at Mad Cave Studio. I'm a freelance editor at Mad Cave, but he and I had
Right.
had been working together prior to this. And we've worked on other projects together, namely The Deadliest Bouquet for Image, and a few other projects that hadn't gotten off the ground yet. So I had said, look, I need an artist that can draw horses because I know horses are
Hmm.
tough to draw.
Yeah.
Um, and I had worked on a project years ago. I was doing like some lettering and some graphic design for a project, and the horses looked like bears. Like their heads, like it looked like somebody drew a bear and then just elongated their nose.
Hmm.
Um, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. And Liana Kangas, who's this fantastic creator and artist, was with me when I was working on this and said, "That's a bear. Like that's straight up a bear." So one of the quotes I have from Leangus is
Yeah.
Liana Kangas. That's your new name, Liana, is Leangus. Um, is 10 out of 10 not bears. So
Oh, okay.
Amagoya draws good horses. No, so I mentioned to James, I said, I want an artist who can get the fantasy look,
Hmm.
um, and really has a good color palette because I was looking for somebody to possibly
Oh,
color it as well.
all right. Did she
So
end up doing
Amagoya
both?
does, yes, Amagoya does both. I'm
Good.
doing color flats, and Amagoya
Okay.
is doing all the color renders and everything.
Gotcha.
And
I'm going to go back to
and
our art as you talk about it.
yes, and that's you just scrolled past it. That's Christabel communing at the lake. In the poem, she's speaking to basically the powers that be, God or whomever, to bring my betrothed home safe. In our story, she's trying to commune with the spirit of her mother who's passed. So Amagoya had worked with James on I Am Hexed, which is a fantastic like witch political thriller that James worked on. And so he had floated her name, and I was just thrilled with the work. She's just fantastic, and she's great to work with. That covers Natasha Alterici. We have 4 cover artists. We have Natasha Alterici, Allison Sampson, Fabian Lelay, and Skylar Partridge. That's Fabian's. I did them all alphabetically. Skylar Patridge, and Allison Sampson has Christabel going up against Geraldine with the Starlings. Um,
That is
so
such
I
a
mean,
unique take. I love
it's such a unique take, and that blue is so bold.
it. Hmm.
That blue is just so bold, and then the Geraldine in that orangey pinkish red. I mean, I love it. I love it. It's got this this circular look to it. It's fantastic. But yes, Amagoya can draw horses. 10 out of 10,
These,
not bears.
those are not bears. That is not a
10
bear.
exactly.
And
Um,
in fairness to that one artist, yes, I have absolutely heard that besides hands, horses are the hardest things to. Well, actually,
yes,
horses are much harder than hands, and hands are the next hardest, is what I have heard. I can't
yes.
draw anything, so
And I know, and believe me, I get it. I get
I,
it. The problem is the way it looked like the person was drawing them from memory of what a horse might possibly look like. I'm like, the internet exists, and even if it didn't exist, there are there's reference that you can find of a horse. Like this is just not a horse. Um, and I feel bad saying that, but I
well,
do
you
have to say
haven't.
by
Yeah,
the end of the book,
yeah.
the horses did get better by the end of the
Okay.
book.
All right.
That
And
first
we
chapter,
haven't
there were
outed
definitely
anybody.
bears.
It's
Yeah.
fine. Nobody. I we're trying to grow the listenership and the watchership, but I'm not too worried about one poor artist getting on YouTube and oh, I love my bears.
Look, if they were supposed to be bears, they were great, but they were
You,
supposed
what,
to be horses.
but you did work on the script, so So I think they were probably horses. So one thing that I thought was super interesting, and you did talk about how there were 4 covers.
Yes.
Most Kickstarters we run across have variants, and you pick this variant for this price, this variant. You're going to let your backers pick their cover when they do their survey. Is that correct? And they're all the same price?
Yeah. All the
That's
covers
cool.
are the same price. We even have a tier where you can get all 4 covers. We have a tier where you can get 2 covers. And I think it's a matter of, you know, I'm not going to say, oh, I like this over that, because
Hmm.
each of the covers has a very unique take,
They
and
were.
each of the artists have their own style that they bring to it. Like the Natasha Alterici cover, I say reminds me of Precious Moments. Remember the little Precious Moments figurines?
I mean, yes, I know they exist, but I've got to go
But
back to the page.
when you look at Natasha's cover,
Hmm.
it's like this sort of childlike version of Christabel, which reminds me of the original Christabel in the text, because when we see her in the graphic novel, she's an adult woman. So this sort of there's this childlike version that Natasha captured that I thought is fantastic.
Hmm.
Um, Allison captured the back and forth in a very graphic, very bold colored way, um, the back and forth between Christabel and Geraldine. So that's again a very different take on it. You have Skylar's version, which is this beautiful image of Christabel, and you see Geraldine and Leoline the king, and in the background you see Wei Jun, who is Christabel's, like, I'm not going to say sidekick because he's literally a giant. He's like 7'2". But he's her protector. And then you have Fabian's, which just shows this very dirty, gritty, angry, I'm going to kick your ass
Hmm.
side of the character as well. So I don't want to say, oh, well, if you pay extra, you get this, because I'm not playing favorites, because they're
Right.
4 very unique covers that all show an aspect of the story, and all by incredibly talented people.
Absolutely.
So I just want everybody to be like, oh, I really like this one. And if you really want both covers, then, or all 4 covers, there is a tier for that.
No, I do like
So,
that you don't have a tier for 3, because you're not going to let them leave one out. I do like that.
well, I don't feel right letting
Yeah.
them leave one out. Like I
Right.
could see somebody saying, I like these 2. I can see
Right.
that. But I can't see somebody being like, I don't like that one, because it's like, damn it, they're all good.
Yeah.
These are all incredibly talented artists and creators that took the time to to take this sort of labor of love and interpret it through their own style and through their own lens.
So
So yeah.
did you show them, did you give them like the what, about 40 to 50 pages that are done to read, or just a couple pages and talk them through the story for them to come up with their versions?
I sent them, at the time that the covers were getting done, we had about 35 pages, give or take.
Hmm.
And I sent them that. I also sent them the character designs, that we have some of them on the Kickstarter page, so they could see not just scale, but also and this is fantasy in the sense that Christabel literally has blue hair, kind of thing. So I wanted to say, okay, look, if you have a background scene and you have somebody with purple hair, that's going to be perfectly fine, because our lead has blue hair.
Yeah.
You know, so I sent the character designs from Amagoy. I also sent the pages, and the pages up to that point were lettered as well. So if they wanted to read the story, they could read the story. I also said, if you want the pages without bubbles, let me know, and I can give you that. This way, you can literally just pick colors if you wanted to do
Hmm.
that. And I said, here's a link to the poem on poetryfoundation.org. If you want to read it, you can read it. I'm not, this isn't homework,
Right.
but this is the gist.
Do you think anybody took you up on the poem?
You know what? It's not my business. It's not
Okay,
homework.
there
They
you
all they all they all
go.
kicked ass on what they
Right,
did. So
right.
whether they read it or not, they knew the assignment and they
Gotcha.
they killed it. And actually, we had done an ash can of the first 20 pages for New York Comic Con this past year. And Skylar had done a cover for that. So Skylar was already familiar with the characters. Um, and we had shopped it around at New York Comic Con to different publishers, and unfortunately, nobody bit. So we said, all right, well, we're going to go forward, and we're going to do this
Mhm.
as a Kickstarter. And I asked Skylar back to do more covers, and she was available. So
No, I think that's brilliant. I believe she did the hardcover for Frankie White's "Eat My Flesh, Drink My Blood," I believe,
yes,
and that
yeah,
that is where I was introduced to her work, and just such a bold image. It's just literally, I had to get the hardcover, and I rarely move up softcover or hardcover on a book I haven't read yet. I'm the
mm,
type that falls in love with the book, and this is good. I didn't buy it twice, but I'm usually the person that buys Sandman, and then I have to hunt down 8 of the 10 Sandman hardcovers I can get, and I'm still too short, and I probably always will be based on the last prices I saw.
I
I
was going to
needed
say eBay is just awful for them.
I needed to get there before the TV show too. I think they all popped up, but hey, 8 of 10, I'm happy. So her image saved me from getting the soft cover and missing the hardcover, and I
Yeah,
just such a talent. I'm ignorant of the other artists, but the work on the page is all of them are great. I'll probably go Skylar because I mean you can't go wrong with any of the four. Um, but I
Allison
promised you.
Sam.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say Allison Sampson's worked on Hit Girl and worked with Stephen King, Beautiful Girls. Um,
Who's Stephen? Who's that?
Stephen King, the
Yeah. Who?
the author.
Who? I'm kidding.
I was really scared for a second. I was like, are you, please God tell me this man is joking.
No, I
Um,
was I was on a podcast once, and someone brought up an author that I didn't know, but I do know Stephen
okay.
King.
Fabian had done Jade Street Protection Services for Black Mass Studios. Natasha Alterici has done had a great series at Vault called Heathen, and is doing some webcomic work. So I mean, they're all incredibly
Strong. Yeah.
talented, strong creators that I was very, very happy to. I mean, I always approach if I'm, going to look to have an artist do a cover or something. I always sort of just approach being like, look, I know you're very busy. So
Mhm.
this is the situation. If it's something you're interested in, great. If it's something you're not, it's totally fine.
Of course. Right.
Because I also don't want somebody to work on a project that they really don't feel any type of draw to it. Like I wouldn't go to an artist who is strictly a horror artist for
Mhm.
a fantasy romance kind of thing, because it might not be their bag, or maybe it
Right.
is.
And
So
and I truly believe on Kickstarter, even more so than the direct market, it's more important to have the team care
yeah,
than in the direct market you can hire a super talented artist and they can give a beautiful image, and that sells in previews. But on Kickstarter, I might see somebody share it, one of your artists, and say I did this cover for this book and I liked it because blank, and I might be more likely to go. So I think that was incredibly smart in any case, but specifically in Kickstarter. But
yeah, I want people to be as invested in the story and invested in the project as I am.
right.
Anybody who's working on it, I want them to be part of it. The map that was done by an artist in South Africa named Del Williams, and she just did this. I had done a really rough, outline of a map and stuff, and she has a story called Warden where she did these maps for it, and I saw it on her page, and I was like, wow, I have any has anybody ever commissioned you for a map? She's like, "No, nobody's ever commissioned me for a map. Do you want me to do a map?" I was like, "Yes, I would love it." And she just did like every kingdom has their own little castle, and there's the mountains and the lakes and everything, and it's just really it's amazing.
Oh, that is really cool. I'm going to put up the URL one more time. And I did promise you I was going to get you out in about a half hour, and I think I have by 12 minutes. But
I talk too much. Don't worry.
well,
It always happens.
I usually have 4 products, and it's fun. But I also love when it can be one-to-one, or just a couple people where we can really kind of get into this. And I enjoyed the talk quite a lot. Just in case someone is on Facebook and came across it, the podcast, they will have already heard this. YouTube Live, they will already have heard this. But if they're on Facebook right now, they just came in, they had a couple drinks, and they popped it on. Let's give them a 30-second pitch. If they were walking past your booth at New York Comic Con, how would you get them interested in Christabel?
Exiled princess turned mercenary searches the 6 territories for any type of mystical item that will kill her evil sorceress stepmother.
That's awesome. And I am so into the witch that can be what you need to get into your house, and then
Worm
and
your
then
way in.
yeah, and then she does what she wants with once she's in there. I love that. So I'm excited. I saw the page and I was like, oh, this looks so unique, so interesting. Coming from the poem thing, I was just like, all right, this is scratching a lot of itches, and I'm super excited.
It's highbrow.
Please,
It's a poem.
yeah, please come back volume 2 and 3. And when you do your sci-fi other poem, I would love to hear about it.
Thank you so much. Thank you
All
for
right.
having me.
No, my total pleasure. And good luck the rest of the campaign. I know you're going to kill it. All
Thank
right,
you. Be
everybody that
well.
was in, Tate, anybody that was in there, thank you for popping in. Good night,
Thank you
everybody.
very much.